And our studio guest this morning is the Minister for Regional Australia, Simon Crean, and we'll have a look at what the Sunday papers are covering very shortly. But just before then, and too late for the Sunday papers, but they've lifted an embargo on a surprise and unannounced visit that Julia Gillard made to Afghanistan. She's actually on her way to a conference in Brussels of European and Asian leaders, but she decided she wanted to make a trip to Afghanistan, her first trip. They're watching some football match, I think, live by satellite, Andrew, from Australia there. That would probably be the grand final. She did say that while she was there that she was absolutely determined that Australia would stay the course in Afghanistan. And there was certainly no suggestion of extra troop numbers, Andrew. The opposition has suggested, at least David Johnston, the Shadow Defence Minister, has suggested an extra 360 troops, but she said that to this point she's had no such request from military command.
No, but I doubt that the military command would give such a request. They know that Labor is predisposed not to listen to that kind of thing. They don't want to hear that from the military. The military's invested in a strategy, and if it's not working, they won't want to put up their hand to say it's not working. So I discount that slightly. You've got to respect their expertise, but you have to also realise they wouldn't say it. The fact is, I think it's interesting that for 3.5 hours we had a firefight recently in which an Australian soldier was killed, and there was none of the air support that would have, or the artillery that would have wiped out the Taliban that were shooting them, who were free to leave and come back to kill another day. I think that's an issue. And our former top soldier in Iraq, Brigadier General Jim Molan, has said that is very much an issue that needs to be discussed.
We're not there on our own, though. The air support comes from other countries.
Well, of course it's an issue, and that's why it's being investigated. I mean, of course it's an issue. If Australian soldiers killed at any point, it's an issue, and then when we hear from on the ground from another soldier this sense that they were unsupported, that's an issue. But there is an investigation going on. I think that's important. And, you know, we keep hearing, oh, the CDF and the top brass couldn't really say they want more because they know the government said no. Well, I just think, how on earth then do we ever judge what's needed? I mean, we have to accept the CDF is a bloke of principle, which I think he is. I think he would be telling the government directly what's needed. I think we also have to accept that there is a $1 billion spend on new measures for force protection rolling out at the moment. And I don't know, I get the sense, none of us are there, I get the sense that they are testing things. They know that the IEDs are causing a lot of havoc. There are these new measures.
It wasn't the idea that was the problem here, though.
No. But there are these new measures being put in place, and they're trying to work out what's needed.
There's a lot in what you say, but I just think there are political imperatives that strangle the ability of the top brass to say something, and I don't think you can...
Behind closed doors, though?
So, even behind closed doors, yes. I mean, America has played this very point out between its top brass in Afghanistan and the Obama administration.
But guys
even lost their job.
Perhaps all this might come up if we have the parliamentary debate,
and the thing,
which has been promised that we will have for the first time.
And when we do have the parliamentary debate, what position do you think Tony Abbott will take? Because David Johnston, was he out in front of the party when he suggested that they should increase their numbers? Because Tony Abbott didn't immediately come in behind him and support that.
It seemed like it was a bit of a thought bubble from Tony Abbott. He wasn't quite clear on what his position was. He was suggesting that they would support more troops and more supplies, more equipment, more arsenal, etc. But then he backed off it a little bit, and so we really don't know. We'll have to wait, I guess, until he clarifies it either today or during the parliamentary so-called debate.
I think David Johnston has been doing his job. He's been talking to a lot of people, including Jim Molan, I'm sure, who's, as you say, has all that experience on the ground, and that's the view he's come to, and he just put it out there. I'm not sure that he'd briefed his leader before he did.
Yeah, but he did say at one point, though, that he would listen to the troops ahead of what the command might say, which seems to be a fundamental breach of how the military works.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought he was a little provocative in saying about the top brass that, essentially that he didn't trust what they said. I think you can put it like I've just put it without being quite as offensive as that. But, there is a real issue here. But the point, I think, is that it's one thing to say about we need to bring in more force protection stuff, whether it's artillery or planes and all that, to have on tap our stuff rather than be in the queue for someone else's. But the thing is, while America's commitment, which is primary here, is being led by an ambivalent leader in Barack Obama, I think that's the real issue here. You can go to Afghanistan all you like, but I think the real trip to do is to Washington and try to figure out, does Barack Obama really want to win this war? If he doesn't, then it's not much point in sending our
guys. The
guys.
argument is not about do you want to win this war, what does winning this war means. We now have David Petraeus there, and we know what his view is in terms of counterinsurgency, and it's back to the sort of the Hearts and Minds Command, and it's not about trying to turn Afghanistan into a kind of a modern Western democracy.
Right, but even he is at odds with Obama, so this is the problem.
And just on that too, the General Petraeus did congratulate Julia Gillard on her own counterinsurgency, as he put it. The newspapers, Kerry-Ann, yes. Rob Oakeshott has dispelled some myths. He said he was only ever a national by accident.
He said he fell into it. He was a young bloke. He'd left university and he joined the office of Mark Vaile, who was the then Federal National Party leader in 1993. He really wanted a job. And it took him some time to realise that perhaps this wasn't the party for him. In the interim, in 1996, he stood as a Nationals candidate for state parliament. There were a number of things that started to eat away at his conscience. He believed it was a deeply racist party. He didn't feel comfortable abstaining from a vote on the injecting room in New South Wales. He didn't like their stance on the Republic, so it took him some years, but he realised that this wasn't the party for him.
1996.
1993 he joins Mark Vaile's office, and
became a Member of Parliament in 1996 for the Nationals.
Correct.
And then left the Nationals when?
About 8 or 9 years later.
2007.
2007. So for a decade he's a National Party MP, and he doesn't realise he's with a racist party, or if he does, it's not going to interfere with his career. Is that what he's trying to invite us to believe?
He was on a journey. He was evolving. He was on a political journey.
To the end of the earth at the moment.
No, I think it is an unusual story, no doubt about it. There's plenty of politicians around, high-profile ones like Brendan Nelson, who've been with one party.
True.
And then later in life switch parties, and not that much later in life, to be honest. So that happens.
Well, he was a member of the Labor Party for about 20-something.
Well, exactly
years,
right.
Yes.
But to stand for a party and sit in the parliament for that long is perhaps surprising. But then again, remember there was a period when the Nats were courting new-look MPs. They wanted to attract more of that regional vote, not just the
they
rural
did that
vote.
federally, but in state parliament with the I thought they were pretty consistently solid on their approach and their philosophical underpinnings.
But I think that's the point. Yes, people go on a voyage, and you see people at age 50 in the Liberal Party that should have been in the Labor Party, because people learn. But more often, of course, you see people being made conservatives who used to be of the left. You know the famous thing: if you don't have a brain, all that kind of stuff. But the point is,
I know what I don't disagree with.
Exactly.
You wouldn't, but I certainly would. But listen, the point here is not that he's made a voyage. It is that he is demonising, not just made a voyage, he's demonising the Nationals as a party of racists. Now, I think that's a very serious charge. If I was sitting in a party of racists, I would leave instantly. He actually was there for more than a decade. So I think either he is morally blind or is making it up.
He said the racism he detected within the Nationals.
Yeah, I don't think...
If I was in a racist party, I would leave.
The bloke is married to a woman who is Aboriginal, part Aboriginal, I think, understand?
South Pacific Islander.
South Pacific Islander. He overheard, and she overheard uncomfortably at National Party function some reference to, blacks and poofters that made them unhappy. Clearly, everyone around him he did not find was racist, or he wouldn't have been there. I mean, that's
what's put in.
No,
here.
He said racism within the party.
Racism within the party.
They've been comfortable being in the party, then leave.
I don't know Rob Oakeshott. I've not met him. But it seems to me he's a bloke who wants to influence policy. He wants to influence our society. And a place to do that he found himself at quite a young age was in the political realm. And what a great place to do it from. And it's taken him a while to work out that he's really an independent.
He's well placed now. Graham will have to move on, but there's going to be a crackdown on parliamentary entitlements, perhaps?
Perhaps. How many times have we heard this? Labor, Kevin Rudd did call for an inquiry, commission inquiry. They've had the results of that inquiry for some time now and done nothing about it. Surprise, surprise. What it's apparently found, thanks to an FOI request, is that parliamentarians too often abuse their travel perks, particularly their overseas travel perks, and I think there is no doubt about that. I'm personally not opposed to politicians going around the globe and finding out more and broadening themselves. I think hooray for that. They could do with a lot of broadening. But there needs to be a little more accountability of what they learn and what they bring back to the parliament for it to be used. But there is an incredible statistic that one of the papers suggests that each parliamentarian, their perks add up to $1.65 million. Now, if that seems means excessive. I think that's perks loosely defined.
Very
I think
loosely
that's
defined. If it's essential
all
to
your
your
probably
job.
it's probably all your electoral staff and your phone and everything.
Everything.
I'm not impressed by a mere figure like that.
No,
I'm
I
not
agree.
impressed. What I need to see is this is the entitlement and this is how it's being abused. Then I'm impressed. But just to say 1.5 million, who knows what that involves? Staff, research.
If you made a slip, it's probably
job.
closer to 2 million.
I think we can safely say, though, there is room for tightening, and there is always room for tightening.
You
that
can
means put in
always
place
say
a
that
system.
in any regime, and never anyone's
It's not
going to
gonna
complain.
happen.
I need
Won't
to
be
see
happening.
offence and remedy. The rest is just nothing.